Welcome into the Take the North podcast presented by Audacy. I am Dan Wiederer, back from the owners' meetings, back from Florida, and pleased to be launching a special pre-draft episode of the podcast today, joined by our friend Brian Baldinger, former offensive lineman, Duke Blue Devil, Audacy NFL insider, and host of the best football show. Baldy, how you doing?
I'm good, Dan. It's good to be with you. I mean, we're all exactly the same. We're all in the countdown here to draft night in Detroit. A little over 3 weeks. So the excitement is on, and I'm here to kind of do whatever I can to kind of share and shed some light on it.
Yeah, the pre-draft runway is always really, really long, and then somehow the calendar flips to April, and you feel like it's right on you. And here we are now, like you said, just 3 weeks away. And as we talked about off the air, the Bears start this whole thing off. And for the last 3 months here, as I'm sure you can imagine, in Chicago, it has been a fascination with the quarterback position and the quarterback situation and the quarterback evolution of how Ryan Poles was going to handle his business. Before we dive deeper into the main prospect, Caleb Williams, that the Bears will be eyeing up in the draft, I'm curious how you followed from afar just kind of the decision-making process, the exit strategy from Justin Fields, and the idea of pivoting on to a new course here for Ryan Poles and the Bears.
Well, I don't think, Ryan Poles, I don't think it was an easy decision for Ryan Poles. I mean, I think he likes Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. And I think he was on a good trajectory. But, it's a reset button that they hit. And, financially, it makes a lot of sense if Caleb Williams is there to take Caleb Williams and move on from Justin Fields. I'm sure Justin Fields and the Bears feel like he was worth a whole lot more than a sixth and maybe a fourth-round pick. But that's you can't control the market like that. The market got flooded by backup quarterbacks, and they got what they got. But it's really about looking forward. And I think it's exciting. I think it's an exciting time for Chicago to have the number one picks and to have Caleb Williams available. Because if it was somebody else and not named Caleb Williams, then maybe they didn't make that decision.
Right.
Maybe it's not as easy. And I think it makes it a lot easier once you really study and evaluate Caleb.
One of the fascinating parts of this issue right now is that the Bears inherited the Panthers pick. And so to have the number one overall pick with a team that actually won 7 games last year gives them a little bit of an opportunity to build up the infrastructure around a young quarterback better than a lot of teams that choose number one overall. Before we get into Caleb more specifically, what do you see as kind of the support system that they've already kind of built up and obviously have a chance to build up more 3 weeks from now in the draft?
I agree. And I think it's really important because I always believe there's 2 camps when you talk about trying to rebuild your roster. And do you get the quarterback first and then spend all the resources that you can to support your quarterback? Or do you build the team up around him, and then when the quarterback is ready, you plug him in? But I feel like the Bears are doing both. I believe that, whether it was bringing in DJ Moore last year, picking up DeAndre Swift in free agency, going to trade for Keenan Allen, looking at the upgrades or at least the depth building with Ryan Bates and, some of the guys that they did on their offensive line. We're adding Gerald Everett and adding an offensive coordinator, all the things that they've done. I feel like they're doing both right now simultaneous.
With Caleb, obviously, there has been talk for years now about the type of upside, the type of talent, the type of feel for the position he has. As you've dived deeper into his tape and looked at what he does, what are the things that just jump off of the screen to you when you're studying Caleb Williams? Well,
I mean, I have a history with Caleb going back to when he was in high school. I worked with the quarterback collective, and I sat down the film room when Caleb was in high school, and I threw up Holmes tape and Josh Allen tape and Russell Wilson tape, and like, how do you attack cover 3? How do you identify quarters? What's the bet? I mean, he was sharp. He was sharp in a film room when he was 17 years old. He was sharp, and then when you went back on the field and you watched him throw. I mean, I remember making a mental note. I was in Indianapolis for one camp with him, and it was the top high school prospects in the country at quarterback. And I remember watching him throw going, if he was at the combine that year, he'd throw the ball better than anybody else that was at the combine. He just had, the Bears had a chance to go visit with him at the pro day and watch him throw and watch the ball jump up. So if you say, okay, he could throw the ball on timing. His offensive line around him this year wasn't very good. You can watch the Notre Dame game. Yeah. Everybody points to that game, 3 interceptions in the first half. And I'm not absolving him of not playing well that day. He didn't play like he's capable of playing. But, I saw him run for a 30-yard touchdown and got called back as a holding. I saw him, the ball bounce off Brendan Rice's, chest and a bullet that hit him right there. And, it's never just the quarterback's fault, but they have to take the responsibility for it. And he did. And it wasn't a good performance right down the road in South Bend. So when I watch him play, I don't know, he has always looked special from the time he took over against Oklahoma or against
Texas. Yeah.
He looked special. And look, whether it's Lincoln Riley or Cliff, Kingsbury, these guys have had a chance to work with a lot of great quarterbacks in their time, and he looks better than all of them.
Jeff King, who's the co-director of player personnel for the Bears, had mentioned to Ryan Poles earlier in the offseason that he can sort of classify quarterbacks into two classes. They're either artists or surgeons. And Ryan has been pretty adamant in saying that Caleb can be both, but his artwork is the thing that is the most beautiful thing to watch. When you see his playmaking artistry, how do you describe that to people who haven't watched it extensively and are trying to figure out what all the buzz is about?
Literally, he can make throws and complete passes from any angle. Whether he's got a blitz coming right in his face and he's got to bend it around an oak tree, if he's got to go hard left because the blitz is coming from his right, and he's got to be able to square his shoulders and make a throw. Mechanically, he's very, very sound to me. But he also has all the off-platform stuff that we love about Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and some of the other, freaks in this league that are leading their teams to the postseason every year. He's got some of that. I don't believe he's just Joe Burrow who could just sit in there, to use the analogy, and just play surgeon.
Yeah.
I think that it would be almost detrimental to his ability if you just asked him to do that, because he is good on the move and he can escape and he does keep his eyes down the field. And when Jordan Addison was there, he was a better player. So I think if you put him on the field with really good talent around him, you're going to see a showcase of an assortment of abilities that not everybody has.
When Ryan Pace was the general manager here, he and his staff used to ask, as they were evaluating particularly the top tier prospects, why might this guy fail in the NFL? And they would try to get to the bottom of what is going to be the Achilles heel, what is going to be the thing that maybe prevents this guy from reaching the potential that we see in him. When you look at that with Caleb, what is it that would lead you to say, okay, this might be something that prevents him from being the star that he's projected to be right now?
Well, I guess, I don't think there's a character issue in him that says he's not going to work hard, he's not going to lead, he's not going to be the first one in. I don't believe that is part of his makeup. I believe he feels like he's born to be a great quarterback, and he's done the things necessary to get where he's at. I guess the one is the phrase hero ball. I don't think he wants to play hero ball. But sometimes you got to play that way when things break down around you. Or if your number one receiver is on the ground and you got to go someplace else and the blitz is coming at you. I guess he could fall into that category of trying to do too much. But sometimes that's just a product of what's around you. If your left tackle is just getting beat and you got to, and I'm not saying this about Braxton Jones, but I'm saying at college, if your left tackle is getting beat and the heat's on, what are you going to do? Yeah. So I guess if you said what could lead to failure, maybe just trying to do too much. I don't think he's going to be guilty of that, because I think he knows down distance, the game situation, when to throw it away, and when to kind of make those type of throws. But I would say that'd probably be the one thing he might be guilty of. And
you may have to live with some of that early on as he learns to figure that out, right, at the NFL level?
Yeah, sure. Look, Notre Dame played a different defense against him. They played, a real man-to-man rat blitz overloads. They threw a lot of NFL stuff at him in that game, and we saw what the results were. It wasn't all his fault, but yeah, you might have to live with some of that as the game begins to slow down and he begins to get trust and timing with his receivers.
One of the most intriguing parts of the 2024 draft for the Chicago Bears is that they have another pick in the top 10. And it's funny because in most years we would have spent January 7th to now talking nothing but the number 9 pick. Instead, we've been so focused on the quarterback situation and the number 1 pick that we've barely gotten around to number 9. But when you look at that number 9 pick, when you look at the way the draft board stacks up, when you look at the needs the Bears have, I'm curious what your intrigue is in terms of the number of different pages Ryan Poles could turn to in the Choose Your Own Adventure book and be right with the selection he makes.
Well, we're going to find an awful lot. I mean, I'm going to use a football term here about Ryan Poles. We're going to find out what kind of agility he has, because you're going to need agility to maximize that number 9 pick. We feel very certain about Caleb.
Yeah.
But at number 9, and we're 23 days out from the draft. So there's going to be trades that will be made before we get to draft night. But even on the clock, I mean, if one of these receivers, let's just say Rome Odunze, drops, and I don't think it's a drop. Other guys might get pushed up. But, is Rome Odunze available? To me, you can't pass him up if he's there at 9. Is Joe Alt somehow available? Is Dallas Turner available at 9? I feel like they need an edge rusher. They need a receiver. They need a corner. I think those are positions of needs, and they may all be available. None of them may be available. And then you go, okay, to use the agility, phrase here, what can you do to maximize that? Is it a trade back with a team where you could still get a guy that you really covet and get extra picks? Because I feel like the number 2 pick for Montez Sweat is gold, because there is not – Montez Sweat isn't in this draft.
Right.
There's good edge rushers. Montez isn't in it. They've already gotten a good draft start. Keenan Allen in the 4th round probably isn't available.
Right.
So I feel like the 2nd and 4th round picks have already been turned into gold. Now, what can you do with that number 9 pick? And is there another nugget of gold that the Bears can access there with that pick?
Since you mentioned Alt specifically, let's dive into him for a second, because the people you talk to around the league feel like, man, there are some things here from an offensive tackle perspective that are just hard to pass up on. If he does fall to 9, what are the things that you feel he's most blessed with that people are really raising an eyebrow about?
Well, I mean, the bloodlines are real. My brother played with his father, John, in Kansas City for a long time. Just look at John Alt. There's not many of those people walking the planet. Joe's not as big as his dad, but he's been trained. His brothers played pro hockey. He's been trained to be an athlete. So when you listen to him, he's intelligent. He understands the game. Mental. There's not going to be a lot of mental errors. I also think that, I feel like Braxton Jones and what they drafted last year at right tackle, I think they're set. But if you take Joe, I believe you could play Joe Alt at guard, at least the first year. You could plug and play him, upgrade the guard position. And if Braxton isn't the guy, if they didn't make the right choice at right tackle, I feel like Joe Alt can supplant that going forward. I think there's value if he should be available right away. Even if you leave the tackles in place right now, I think Joe Alt can play. He can play guard. I've said that to other teams that are picking in front of the Bears that might go offensive tackle. I think you could play Joe Alt at a variety of positions, and you could get great value for him.
A year ago, I think you were one of the folks that was highest on Darnell Wright before the Bears selected him, and really liked what he showed coming out of Tennessee. When you look at this class, it feels like everyone's very excited about the depth of this offensive tackle class. Who else behind Alt is the guy for you that jumps out, potentially on the right side, potentially on the left side, whatever floats your boat in terms of that offensive tackle position?
Well, I mean, J.C. Latham at Alabama, just his size. I know guys that trained with him that can kind of speak to his work ethic and some of his agility and just his general power. And now he's working on his hands. He's working on a lot of other things that's going to make him a better pro. But Fuaga is, an enticing candidate. Olu Fashanu. I thought if he came out of the draft last year, there would have been a debate about Olu and Darnell and Broderick Jones about who's the first tackle taken if Olu came out last year. So, I mean, I think those 3 guys at the very top. And it goes a lot deeper than that, than those 3 guys. But those 3 guys, along with Joe, certainly look like they could easily be top 15, if not top 20 picks in this draft. And we might, by the end of the first round, we might see 8 offensive linemen taken. So including a center at Oregon, and, Duke's got Graham Barton, who's played left tackle, but he looks like he could be a starting center. Like, I mean, there's a lot of depth there.
Yeah, that Graham Barton conversion versatility seems very intriguing to a lot of people, where you got a guy that's been really, really good on the outside, but could come
Well,
in.
he started as a 17-year-old freshman. He started 5 games when the number 1 and number 2 centers got hurt at Duke, and he started the last 5 games at center. Now, he's been playing left tackle the last 2 years because that's where they played him. But you watch the way he worked out. You look at his 6'5" and change, 313 pounds, the way that he ran. You go, he could be a Pro Bowl guard. He could be a Pro Bowl center. I feel pretty certain about saying that about Graham. Not because I went to Duke, but I've seen him at OL Masterminds down in Dallas with Duke Manyweather, and talking to a lot of guys in this business that help train these people. I feel pretty good that you're going to get great value for Graham.
A lot of people have talked about the trio of receivers, but I'm going to bring a 4th guy into the conversation just to pick your brain on it a little bit. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be well off the board by the time the Bears pick for the 2nd time in the 1st round. But when you kind of compare Neighbors and Odunze, and then also with the idea of potentially trading back, looking at Brian Thomas also from LSU, how do you kind of size that trio up there of what you're looking at, what each guy brings to the table? Feels like Neighbors is the most electric of the bunch. Odunze might be the guy that is easiest and most fun to coach. And then Thomas seems to be a little bit of a sleeper right now.
Well, he's only a sleeper only because we spent a lot of time talking about the 3 guys you just mentioned, but he's not a sleeper. Yeah. It's a deep draft for receivers. I mean, if you go back 10 years ago with Odell Beckham and Mike Evans, and oh, by the way, the 8th player taken at receiver that year was Devontae Adams. And they said he ran a slow 40, and, by NFL standards, 4.58 is slow, but he's the most productive of all of them, along with Mike Evans. So, you're going to find these receivers into the 2nd round, and it really depends where they go, how they get used, are they allowed to develop, who's the quarterback. So, yes, I feel like Xavier Worthy and, Lad McGonkey, and you could just go through, keep going down, down, down. And I think there's going to be a deep receiver draft. And there's a question of health, how they get used, how they kind of draw up game plans to utilize their skills. I think, Worthy's going to be a player that's going to be Worthy, and the guys that, the other guys at LSU, I mean, they're not being slept on. They're 1st round picks.
What do you like most about Odunze?
When I watch Rome play, I feel like he's a bigger, stronger, faster Garrett Wilson. I think his body control is electric. His ability to track a deep ball, his ability to use a body that's almost 6'3", 200 plus pounds. Like, he's got size and strength, but he's so fluid. Like, when he comes out of his breaks, it's just so smooth. His eyes are fast. His hands are slow, meaning he never shows his hands until he has to show them. Like, he looks very advanced. And then he's got route running ability to be able to beat people, to stack corners. He's a very advanced student. Now, it helped that Michael Penix Jr. came, and he got a chance to really flourish with them for those 2 years. But there's days when I look at Rome and I go, he's the best receiver in this draft. And that's not to knock, obviously Marvin or Malik or anybody else. But he looks like he could be the best receiver in this draft to me some days. He looks like he could be in that category of Jamar Chase when I watch him. He looks special.
2 last things before we cut you free. The edge class is one that obviously the Bears will be eyeing up, as we talked about a little bit ago. Who is your favorite of that top tier of edge rushers, and what do you see in that particular guy?
Well, I think it starts with Dallas Turner. Dallas Turner, when you just watch him move, like his speed to power, his long arm, like it's pretty exceptional right now. So I feel like he's in front of Leatu. I think he's in front of Jared Verse right now. I think he's the number 1 edge prospect coming out. But you also look at guys like Chop Robinson. You look at Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, if you just watch Edgerrin Cooper at Texas A&M play Alabama, you'd go, he's the best edge rusher because of his ability to do so many different things and his suddenness and how he just closes so quickly. So, but I feel like Dallas Turner, just his size right now, his speed, the variety of moves that he already has before he even begins the process. I feel like he's number 1 coming off the edge right now.
You see him as system versatile, being able to play either 3-4 or 4-3 on the edge for you?
Yeah, I do. Because I know that he can do those things. He did those at Alabama. Like a guy like, I don't know, TJ Watt. I mean, TJ Watt drops into coverage. He gets interceptions. He covers the flat. Pittsburgh's that team that's very versatile. If you asked him, he'd rather rush the quarterback every play, but he doesn't mind showing off his ability to drop into coverage and, get into the flat, do those kind of things. So I feel like he's got that versatility.
Very last thing for you. I've told people for the last 3 months that this has been a very unique offseason for me because there's a lot of times we get to this point of the year and the Bears are an afterthought. They're irrelevant. They're on the outside looking in. Nobody has any buzz about anything that they're doing. This has been totally different. The whole league has been fascinated by what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, where they're going to go from here. And there seems to be a sentiment that their window of opportunity is opening for them here. And now it's a matter of trying to get that steel rod in the window to keep it open for as long as possible. When you look from afar, how do you kind of describe the landscape of what you see with where the Chicago Bears are right now?
Well, we've seen dramatic turnarounds in the NFL. I mean, with the Houston Texans last year, with C.J. Stroud, what he brought, what the coach brought. We've seen it with Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, turning around a moribund franchise. Like, I feel like the Bears can be that team. Like, I feel like they've addressed a lot of things defensively. They still need a really hot edge rusher for sure. But I feel like they've filled all the spots, whether it's receiver, edge rusher right now. I feel like if the quarterback can play at a high level right away, the Bears can compete right away. Matt Ryan did it in Atlanta. Peyton Manning did it in year 2 in Indianapolis. I mean, you go through the history of this league. When you get the guy, and he's the guy, and he makes your secretaries better, and he makes the people that make Soldier Field playable on Sundays, he makes everybody better. And if he's that guy, I feel like the Bears can compete in the NFC North this year.
If he is that guy, if you're Ryan Poles, are you running that card up to the podium 3 days in advance and saying, hey, we're good, just tell us when we're back on the clock?
Well, there used to be a time when they would negotiate that first-round pick before the draft and just get it done. Right. They don't do that anymore, but I feel like they may play the suspense card and hold it for a little while. Yeah. But I feel like it's going to read Caleb Williams when it gets read by the commissioner.
Well, great stuff, Baldy. We appreciate you carving time and joining us today. Obviously, we're on the doorstep of the NFL draft. Can't wait to get there. And as always, we appreciate you taking out some time to join us.